Hi, everyone, and welcome to TheraWin.Health, your one stop shop for exploring the beauty of culture and therapy. We have weaved together expert advices and heartwarming stories for you. So, today we have with us Amanda, who is a Vietnamese therapist. So, hi, Amanda, how are you doing today?
Hi, I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Thank you.
Same here. Okay, so Amanda, we'll start with a bit introduction about yourself and what inspired you to pursue a career in psychology and mental health.
Yes, so I'm a Vietnamese American. I was born in Fremont, California, and I still live in the Bay Area as a therapist. Um, I started my journey about 12 years ago working with kids with autism and then expanding my knowledge within mental health. I started becoming a behavior specialist for adolescents up to ages 21, working with developmentally delayed adolescents, and then with co occurring diagnosis of mental health. And then I became a mental health clinician.
That's an interesting journey. So, Amanda, when did you come to USA, or were you born here?
So I was born here. My mother is from southern Vietnam, Saigon, and my dad's from North Hanoi. And what really started for me was actually I visited Vietnam when I was around in 2005. I visited my mom's home country and it was very poor. I had families living in a shack, didn't have much, technologies or goods. And it made me like change my perspective on how I saw life. So when I came back, I started volunteering in homeless shelters, even retirement homes, and just researching more about how to give back to the community. So I think that's where my idea of helping others stemmed from. And then I started taking a class in psychology around high school. And the subject was so interesting just to know how the brain works and how people can engage in behaviors. And then as I started to excel in my college, I started having a passion for clinical psychology, which is more the mental health disorders.
Right, right. So, Amanda, since you have seen Vietnam quite well, and how the culture is there, so what changes do you see in perception of people about mental health from Vietnam to USA?
Well, I've heard a lot of stories, especially from my clients who actually immigrated from Vietnam. I do work with mostly Vietnamese population, and also I do have American population. But most of my clients that I serve that are Vietnamese are immigrated from Vietnam. They shared with me that it was really difficult to access resources, especially if their children were in school and they were having behavioral outbursts, or they were developmentally delayed in academics. There was no resources or support. So a lot of them found out about America having resources, and some of them did get sponsored to come to immigrate over here just to get the support needed. I've also noticed that there could be a trend of most of my clients that are Vietnamese are non-speaking, as in they do not talk. Um, and I'm wondering too if it was based on parenting skills or how, you know, parental rules were implemented when a child would talk back or a child would cry, causing the child to not be able to speak or want to speak.
Hmm. hmm. So, Amanda, can you delve into this phenomena more? So, like, what is the real cause of why it happens to a child?
I'm still trying to research it, but it's really interesting because I'm noticing more of not even children, but adults who couldn't even get mental health services for a long time. And I think what really changed and it still is evolving is awareness of mental health within the United States. There's more access to resources, especially doctors. When you go to a doctor because you have a problem, right, you always ask what's wrong with my child or what's wrong with me, and then doctors would they have more access to get referrals. Like, okay, well, this sounds like you need a referral for a behavioral counselor or a psychiatrist. So I think now that we have more access to these resources, it really helps to support the community. But it did take a long time. Yes.
Hmm. Right. So, what is the unique approach that you use for, kids like who are non-speaking or minimal verbal clients?
Yeah, so I had to be really creative, and I really think my experience working as a ABA therapist, which is working with children with autism, is meeting clients at their level of developmental. So let's say if you have an adult that comes in that's 18, you have to observe their interactions and, what do they lean towards, like interests, and also how are they, are they attached to their parents, right? Because a lot of children, they tend to like be latched onto their parents. So then you kind of treat them as a child, and you use a soft voice. You focus on making the place a safe place for them. And then I start to dive into communication with sometimes pictures or even gestures. A lot of it, like I will start with a simple clap. It could be like a thumbs up. It really depends on, their level of understanding. If it's a picture, it's a simple like, let's say, smiley face, right? Can you show me how to happy? And then if they're unable to reply, then I would kind of use two pictures and see, okay, show me happy. And just to see what how cognitive level they're at, because they can't talk doesn't mean that they don't understand, right? They could be very
Right.
intelligent but can't communicate.
Right. Right. Definitely. So, Amanda, since you have worked with so many kids who are struggling with this, what is a typical day of such client looks like? How do they navigate through their day-to-day lives there?
Oh, every day is very different, especially every week. It really depends, especially with my experience with developmentally delayed clients who either have autism or intellectual disabilities or Down syndrome or cerebral palsy. It really depends on, you know, if they're not feeling well internally, like medically, they're not doing well, like if their teeth hurts, right? If they can't communicate, their teeth hurts, then they would have outbursts and more irritable moods. And you can't tell. That's why it's really good to have a relationship with whoever lives with them or whoever provides care for them. Because how are we going to understand how to support someone if you don't really know, or if the client cannot tell you themselves? Right. And I think
Right,
the hardest part is with low cognitive levels for developmentally delayed is that they cannot tell you how they feel.
right. Okay, so Amanda, since it's already difficult for these clients to trust people, right? And it's very difficult to build that
Mhm.
trust. And mostly it's some of one or two person in their family that they can share these thoughts to. So do you think there is so how do you make that trust with those clients that they can also share what's troubling with them with you?
Yeah, you mentioned trust. And what does trust mean when it comes to these families? It's really the stigma of mental health. And it goes back to culture, right? So imagine you go back to Vietnam and there's a child who's very aggressive, right? There's stories that I've heard where the parents keep the child locked in cages or keep them sheltered from the outside world, and it comes with shame, right? Parents have shame and guilt for raising a child this way, or feeling like it's their fault, right? Like, what did the parents go wrong? And that's the same with my clients that I have here that are cultured and also American. Is I feel bad that my child is struggling or having these challenges. Right. So you have to meet them and understand them and hear them out. I think a lot of times is, you hear about mental health, you hear about it in the media being very aggressive or homicidal or suicidal, but that's not all the cases. And it doesn't really help shape what challenges people who have mental health really deal with. It could be something like, I get aggressive because I can't communicate. That doesn't mean that they're a danger to the world. They could be a danger, to themselves or to the people around them, but there's just, you have to imagine them. What are the clients thinking in their mind? Like, why can't you understand me? Why can't you hear me out? So just as long as you keep providing that reassurance is really good, and reinforcing also the families like, hey, you're doing a good job. Like, I know you're trying the best. Like, my favorite tip really is when I'm working with families is don't say no. No is a huge trigger word. When you say
Yeah,
no, you're telling the client or the yeah, the client that they can't do it or that's wrong, but really it's not wrong and there are other ways to find the solution.
right, right. I think you mentioned a great thing with not saying no to them, since it's kind of invalidate their feelings, at one go. That whatever they're feeling, it's not, it's not true. It's not validated, right? So Amanda, since so like, what are some of the stigmas that you have heard from parents of these clients? Where is it coming from?
You know, yeah, and what's funny is me becoming a therapist was also not very looked great upon, right? And I had to have the experience of culture stigma myself becoming a therapist, knowing that it doesn't help. You don't make money, right? People who want to suicide or will be homicidal, they will attempt to do it. But for me, it's like, no, I believe that once you connect with the client and you really understand them and you provide support, you can really impact their lives. And that's the same thing. Like, I don't think about, too much of, okay, how are they different? Or why are they not getting support? It's more of they need someone just to listen to them. And
Yeah.
I think the other problem is with medication, right? A lot of the families, they're fearful of giving their child or, their conservative medications because they feel like it'll alter their brain or cause like long-term damage effects. And I understand, and I try not to bring up, my concerns. I say, hey, this is your choice. You can always try it out, but always check in with your psychiatrist, check in with your doctor, right? I am not a doctor. I cannot give you any suggestions on medication, but I would tell them like, let's try this together. Let's try this new technique. Let's set this new goal and really focus on helping the families advocate for themselves. I think, which is another huge problem in mental health is a lot of families, even clients, are struggling to advocate because they're so fearful.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really great thing for a therapist to do, so that they stand with these parents and make them feel that they're not alone in this journey.
No, and another suggestion is even if, let's say, a client wants a certain thing done, right, or doesn't agree with you, you have to validate it. Very important.
Mm-hmm. So, like, has it ever happened with you that you suggested something, and maybe the client or their parents are not comfortable with doing that? So maybe because of a stigma, maybe because of some fear that they hold. And how do a person navigate through
Yes, that's resistance. It happens very commonly when you're providing therapy and support. And the resistance comes from even their own parents or care providers' own trauma, right? Or their own fears of like, oh, it's not going to work, or I've tried this before and I got hurt, right? As a consequence. But like I said, just being there, providing that space. Even for myself, if I implement a new intervention, I would call to check in with them within a few days. I don't just wait for the next session the next week. I think it's very important to have a very collaborative approach working with especially intense clients who need more support.
that? So, Amanda, how can um, you know, like the environment, the society, can practice certain things to make sure that it's encouraging to these clients?
That's really hard to say, right? Especially if you're migrating from Vietnam, right? Where economically it's not, the country is not doing well over there, right? Third world country. But it seems that when you come to America, there's more nutrients, right? There's vitamins. Most of my clients do take vitamins, and maybe vitamins do help. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor or nutritionist, right? But there could be a belief that home remedies are helpful too.
Right, right. So, do you know any of such home remedies or anything that could be of help?
No, I'm not sure, but I just know that I have families like try a variety. Like it could be even from like drinking green juice, right? Or having a certain, beverage. It could also be like some clients be on strict diets, but like I said, I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just sharing, what I think families believe in, right? Especially if families don't believe in medication, they rather explore natural remedies for things they can access at the grocery store.
Right, that's true. So, as a therapist, um, what do you think of these remedies? Do you think they do work, or do you think we should stick particularly to medications and normal therapy?
It's really hard to tell because I really believe therapy works the most. And I believe once you collaborate with the care providers and the school, whoever's in the support system, and you're all on board, the team approach works really well. Medication, yes, it could hypothetically work. Once again, like I'm not a doctor, but I've seen progress within clients who take medication and also attend therapy.
Okay, so Amanda, what are your primary goals for therapy when you work for these clients, and how do you measure your progress?
So I really just, every session that I have, I just hope that I make their day better or that we learn one thing in session. And that's my goal. And I always do check in with my clients before the session, like, how are you feeling? Or I even ask them, like, hey, like, I noticed that you did this time. Like, great job, right? I think a lot of times, too, we don't really reinforce our own self or know our own progress. So when someone tells us like, hey, you're doing a good job, like be like, oh wow, I am doing a good job. So giving them that awareness that they're doing well or that they are growing and, you know, developmentally or making progress with their goals, like that, you have to kind of like reinforce that. And that's why I say reinforcement is very important because that's what motivates the good behavior, right? The new pattern of behaviors. So I am very thankful that we have to write notes as therapists. It's required by law, and it's ethical. So I can either go back to notes from like a previous session, but I also have a really good memory, and I try to connect with the client individually to really remember, what were their struggles, especially when they first came in, and
Mhm.
highlighting, okay, when we first came in, let's say 3 months ago, right? I've noticed this has changed. How do you feel about this change? And they'll be like, oh, I don't notice it. And then sometimes I'll highlight, let's say, if there's a challenging situation that comes up or an event, then I notice that they're tolerating those challenges better. I will point it out for them. And this also goes for the family, even if it's the nonverbals.
Right, right. So, do you have any specific experience or any success story where it actually worked out and you see the client
Yes,
speaking fluently?
would you like a client that is Vietnamese or a client that is non-speaking
Anything
that I
would
could
work
share?
for us. Yeah, anything that you
Okay,
want.
I do have a lot of success stories. I will talk about one of my clients that I've had for about on and off maybe 3 years. Vietnamese family, a child. Um, he his behaviors I could describe as destructive. He's very aggressive. He would hurt himself, hurt family members, throw tantrums for about an hour long. He actually hit the teachers a couple of times. He hits the students. He would throw toys. So very destructive. Um, and I would see him in my office every week, and I would just work on a lot of emotional regulation skills, like how to calm down, right? But sometimes, like when you talk to a kid, they don't listen. So you have to make it very fun. So I would use videos, I would draw pictures, I would make a game out of it. And then after that, I would always like to play a game of like their preference. My whole office is like a toy playland. Like there's always a bunch of toys, and so I make them feel comfortable and make therapy fun. I think it's very important to make therapy fun. I think there's a lot of you know perceptions of like therapy is boring, it's talking only, but to be honest, I don't like talking for 45 minutes or an hour all the time, right? I like to engage them, and sometimes I'll do like puppet play, or we'll make we'll do a lot of arts and crafts. I think that's really fun to help express their creativity. And then so like with this one kid, I did all of this. I did all of these, and I've also provided homework. It took a lot of work, and I've noticed a lot of children, they benefit from having a reward. So the reward could be they can go out, they can get a toy, they can get a certain food they like with their parent, right? I think a lot of times you got to think about it. We're motivated to earn something, just as adults are motivated to earn money, right? So we have to
True.
work.
Yeah, yeah. So, like, what happened to this client afterwards?
Really well, no more reports. My client did, when I did work with him, he got kicked out of school. So, but he's in a new place now. He's doing much better, making friends, communicating more, able to go outside and enjoy like museums, movie theaters without having temper outbursts. So it just takes a lot of fine tuning and seeing, what does that client need at that certain time. But most of the kids, they need a lot. They need communication practice, they need more play, they need a place where they can just feel safe, right? I think nowadays there's a there's common bullying everywhere in schools. So a lot of my kiddos, especially, they have been bullied. So giving them self confidence skills, and just having them feel like they are important. That's what
Right.
really helped my kiddo.
Mm, that's great. So, you mentioned bullying. So, for these clients, since they're
Mhm.
already struggling a lot with their speech, with what other people say to them, when it comes to going out in the world and feeling like, people are not able to understand you, people are bullying you, that's definitely really tough. So, what is your advice for these parents to look after their kids? Like, how would they get to talk that, yes, I'm feeling this way in my school?
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting is I'm trying to understand more too. Even the kids or the children who bully, they may be struggling with mental health challenges, right? So I think it's really important for parents to just check in with their child, right? Say, how was your day? I think a lot of times we are invested in technology where we don't have quality time and conversations with family members. So really checking in with the kids, noticing unusual behaviors, right? Like, is my child more isolated, or does my child like want to is more quiet? And then I think it's really important too. I think when they have those parent teacher conferences or those other events where parents have the opportunity to talk to the teacher, is just see how's my child doing.
So, uh, the parents, right? You mentioned that parents should also be observant at their home, what how the child is behaving, what is he
Yes.
talking about. So, and you also mentioned technology. Since parents are so much into technology these days, and so much, like earning money so that their kids can have a better life, but they somehow fail to talk to their kids and get time for themselves. get time for kids. So, what advice do you have for
Yeah.
parents so that they can look after the kids?
Yeah, so not only do I just provide therapy with the children, I also provide support for the parents. I provide a lot of education and support and modeling. And I always usually have what we call meetings to talk about, okay, your child is displaying this behavior. I've noticed it's getting worse or it's something happened. How can we work together to try to find a solution, right? So I think for parents is again, being observant is very important. Like you don't need to be with your child 24/7, but just try to, have more quality time when appropriate, right? Like dinner time, right? Engage them in conversation, um, and maybe reduce some tech time where they're not on their tablet or the phone, and having them, engage in like activities together, games, right? Like remember back then we had board games. I
Yeah.
don't know if it's as popular anymore. Like I like to use board games in my sessions, and then the kids are like, "Whoa, what is this game?" But there's so many activities out there. Even going outside, right? Especially during the summertime, going to the park, getting that fresh air, or going to the movies, just exploring the world around them can really stimulate the children's mind. Help them learn so much, especially with socially how to interact, especially with COVID. I think COVID also made a huge impact on children, clients just having troublesome with communication skills. So just
Yeah.
having more exposure and practicing and modeling, for the child or the person that you're caring for, and just modeling that the new communication way of like and just also being accepting too, like it's okay to make mistakes. I think a lot of time is we put too much emphasis on like having to be perfect, and parents should model like it's okay to make mistakes.
Yeah, right. So you mentioned that we should engage the kids in more outdoor activities, take them out for a movie, take them out for in a park. But when we talk about, children who are, say, who has some speech trouble or who are anyways aggressive and or like Down syndrome kids. So their parents and also the world outside, do you feel it's not much open for them so that they can experience the same things as children of their own age can?
Yes, and you mentioned something very important. I think there's the fear, right? The fear of being judged, the fear of my child being hurt or them hurting others. So you have to start slow, right? The starting slow is asking for help, getting the support you need. Therapy does not need to be outside, right? Therapy is now, I mean, what helps now is telehealth. Yeah, especially with my aggressive clients, I mostly do telehealth with them because I don't want to put myself in danger. And I don't want to make sure that they're in more danger when they're out in the community. So I usually start with telehealth, and then I, build that rapport with them. And usually that takes about, for me, maybe 6 months, maybe a little more, just to have that rapport with the client, and
Mhm.
modeling, interventions of how to practice safe body, communication. And then I'll attempt to meet them outside. I'll meet them outside my office, not even in the office, like even in the front of the office, just so we have like a safe space where it's not congested. And just to like play with them, observe with them, and take it slow.
Yeah, so like we were talking about how can others be more mindful, that they be more welcoming to clients like this, to children like this, and parents having this fear of judgment or fear that somebody will hurt their kid or maybe opposite, right? So how
Yeah.
can we navigate that? How can we build that trust in parents as well as for these children and make them experience all the things that children of their age can?
I think there needs to be more awareness of resources. I think there needs to be more access to resources. It'll help families feel that they're not alone. Um, I know that we have some groups, especially in California, where parents can come to join to talk about, these their children. Recently, I've attended a few events where it was like not fairs, but kind of like fairs where they have booths of resources of services. That was really
Mhm.
nice, but it's not all the services. There's so many services that are unknown. And I think would be really good, and I hope one day is if the family has insurance, right? The children has insurance, either Medi-Cal, which is, through the government, or private pay. These insurances should have a lot of resources of where they can go, not just a minimum. And that's what I'm
Mhm.
seeing as a problem. There's minimum resources that are accessible and that are known. Even I am struggling myself to find resources that are out there. Like we need a yellow book for all these resources.
Right, right. So, do you, since we know there is already a lot of gap with resources where parents can find and more resources to be added by the government for these clients and children. So, currently, can you suggest some of the resources that are out there for these parents?
So, it depends on the situation. Like I said, for myself, I used to be an ABA therapist, so a therapist working with children with autism. That's the more needed one, and there's a lot of, I guess, services out there, but I'm not sure about how many companies are out there. I think there needs to be, like I said, a yellow book for all the companies, um,
Sure.
and access for the clients. There needs to be more resources of autism testing, right? ADHD testing, especially for kids, because when you get older, it's very difficult to obtain that test. Um,
Right.
Another one is my own self, right? Like accessing mental health clinics, right? To get the diagnosis that is appropriately for their need, right? When you go to primary care, they're not supposed to diagnose you with a mental health. They're supposed to refer you to someone who knows it. But how many doctors are known out there to provide this, especially for low income families? Um, Also, I know there's probably, the struggle with the wait list, right? So thinking about how common mental health is on the rise, right? Knowing that there's resources, it's just going to take time. But how much time can someone wait to get the services? There's also, resources for families who are struggling with homelessness, right? Housing, domestic violence, substance use. Um, there's really LGBTQ, right? That's really blowing up more as the LGBTQ community. But there's just so much out there, but we don't know, or maybe there's more that's coming. But like I said, it's how do you know all this?
True. Yeah. And I think we all have to be very mindful of, uh, the things that are coming and be prepared for it so that we can better serve these clients, the government can better support them. True. Yeah. So, Amanda, do you have any message for the parents out there who are struggling currently or are still in fear that they can't be much more open about their kid to the world and for the help that is out there?
I want to tell everyone that you're not alone. You're you have support. Just keep advocating. I know it can get hard to find the support you need, but keep advocating. Don't let people tell you like they're not going to get better or it's going to go away. Like if you know something is not, usual, go ask for help. Go ask for resources.
Yeah.
Keep defending your child. You're gonna help them a lot in the long run. And
Right,
don't
right.
give up. Don't give up.
Definitely do not give up. Yes, I think that's a message out there for all the parents who are seeing their children struggling and are still in question whether they should go for help or they should do it themselves. So, Amanda, what is the step to step process, right, for helping these parents to go out there and seek for help? How should they proceed?
Well, first check if what insurance they have. Is it through the government, through the county, through the country, or is it private pay? Go to them first. If you have a primary doctor, go to the primary doctor. I think that's the first step. I'm not sure, how else to access it from there, but you have at least one of those. You have a doctor or you have insurance. And then ask for resources. If they say they don't know, as a primary doctor, the doctor should have at least someone. You may be bounced around to find, an actual place that can support, but just keep asking. And also what's really helpful is research, a lot of research. Google is a wonderful search engine platform where I do use it a lot to find resources in my area.
Right.
Even the schools may know too. The schools may have information, right? Go to the school counselor, go to the admin office, say, hey, do you have any resource for, my child who's struggling behaviorally? A lot of times, as I hate to say it, but you do have to ask.
Right. That's true. Yeah. And it's a great advice for parents out there, definitely. Yeah. So, Amanda, you mentioned previously that there are some games, some tools that you have in your own office. So, to make sure that the kids feel comfortable there, they engage in such activities. So, can you suggest some of these to the parents so that they can have something of their own in their house and make it a fair environment for their children?
Yeah. Well, I also recommend going to your local not grocery store, convenience store. There's Go to the toy section and the game sections. There's numerous of them, but you can start with the basic ones, card games, right? You can make your own card games. Uno is a very popular one. Um, for kids with sensory, right? If your child has sensory needs, there's like sand, kinetic sand. There's Play-Doh. There's like Hungry Hippo, uh, a, a very popular game. And there's like Marble Run, right? Even Legos, building Legos, big block Legos. But my suggestion is, again, Google, Amazon, type in sensory games, sensory activities, sensory objects, right? You'll have a lot. And games, you could just start slow. Don't overdo it too much because then you overwhelm the client with trying to learn something all the time. You want to make it fun for them. Also, my
Yeah.
favorite is art activities. Drawing, painting, coloring, right? Even like gluing paper, like it's all sensory touch.
Right. True. Thank you so much for sharing that. So the next thing that I would really want to know is that are there any misconceptions out there for these children, and how do you want to burst them for the parents out there?
I think a lot of times there's a misconception, especially those who are non-speaking, that they don't understand or they can't talk. That's the big one. They have a brain, they can talk, but they can't communicate in the way that we want them to. Explore, right? I use pictures a lot. I use gestures, even like a simple hand clapping. You can make up your own gestures. Doesn't have to be sign language. And also eye contact is very important. If the child's making eye contact with you, that means they hear you, they understand you. Pictures, right? I think for pictures, it depends. Like using like for them the toilet, right? Kids need to go to the toilet. So using a picture of your toilet or like even just a drawing of the toilet, you can teach them that this is toilet and sign for toilet. So that's one conception I want to talk about. Another one is thinking that they're different. Yes, they're unique, but are they really different from other kids? They are special. They have a heart. They have feelings. They can understand a lot, and just giving them access to share that experience with you.
True. I think all of the things will really help the world understand these children better. And that's what they really want, right? To just be understood by their parents, by the world out there. So, Amanda, to conclude this podcast, my last question would be that how do you envision making a difference in lives of those clients or those children who are struggling with them in the coming years?
I love doing what I do. I started very young, and I want to keep advocating for especially the Vietnamese community. I hope that there's more cultured students who want to be a therapist and really understand the need for it, especially to help break the stigma with many cultures, right? Latinx, Middle Eastern, right? Other Asian ethnicities. There's a stigma with many cultures, and so if I could, I just want to keep mentoring people around me, even with casual conversations, just talking about mental health. I think it can help promote an insight of, how much of the work is really rewarding and just passing that message along to others so they know that there are people out there that really do care about helping, people who are struggling.
Right, right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Amanda, how can our audience connect with you and stay updated with your work?
Yeah, so I actually have an Instagram and it's Therapy Tips by Amanda. I actually post my own skills and ideas um, just to bring awareness of mental health. It doesn't mean that it's going to work, but I just want to somehow spread messages to help people feel heard and supported.
Mhm. Thank you so much for doing the work that you're doing for the world out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. We had a really great conversation with you.